Kane buried his sword in the monster's chest, grimacing as its hideous howls raked his inner ear. It was a writhing mass of tentacled limbs, more akin to some flailing thornbush than any sentient creature. Kane twisted the blade. There was some satisfaction in how it wailed. He panted, leaning on his sword. The cyclopean, monstrous things that slivered from the fogs of the clouded lake had begun to wriggle back into their misted depths. Their hissing, screeching assault had collapsed into a piteous retraction of ill-formed limbs. They had been driven back, for now. Kane stared out across the bleak horizon. On the other side of the lake, the dim city gathered the dust of years. The sight of its impossible geometries chuckled madness along his mind. The opal walls of the dim city leaned at unnatural angles, almost slipping into the occlusion of the black lake. If Kane squinted, he could make out the palace of the king in tatters, connected to itself by Escher stairways and cobbled streets of nonsense dimensions.
"No mask,"
he murmured softly.
"No mask. No mask."
Magus.
Kane blinked. He wrenched his eyes from the halls of the king in tatters, shuddering at the after-image of pallid death masks that haunted his mind. His gaze settled on Namastra. Her yellow rags trailed above bloodied bare feet as she played with little stone runes between slender fingers. The rocks clacked against her long, compacted fingernails.
"We cannot last at this,"
Kane told the witch.
No.
Namastra agreed. She smiled. Her teeth were black and rotten. Kane sneered and smoothed out the folds in his ceremonial robes. Everything looked yellow, as if there was a filter on reality that no amount of rubbing at the eyes could dissipate.
"If they come again, and they will, we'll be overrun."
Yes.
Kane huffed. He watched his cultists gather up the dead and wounded for the sacrificial pyre. The fires licked greedily at the cool air. It spat reds and purples and blasted yellow. Behind the flames, the cave mouth shimmered, muscles twitching in jaws of eroded stone.
"Did you want something, Namastra?"
Namastra's rotted grin widened. Kane shook his head.
"We are abandoned,"
he decided.
"The Master has betrayed us unto death."
The thought sent a tremor through his chin.
How pointless. How utterly pointless.
No, Magus. Not pointless.
Oh? And why is that, witch? Are we a worthy sacrifice? What will the Master buy with our damned souls?
A few cultists glanced in Kane's direction. The Major swallowed. When he spoke again, it was in a markedly quieter tone.
It was all a trick. Where is the sign?
There is no trick, Magus.
Something in Namastra's voice caught Kane's attention. He glanced at her sidelong.
Oh?
They rise,
she promised him. Her distended jawline was dislocated like the maw of a hideous snake.
Black stars rise.
Just to be sure, Kane ordered 4 additional sacrifices from those few able-bodied cultists that remained. A warrior, dragged kicking and screaming to the fire. A whore, weeping and pleading to be spared. a farmer, accepting his lot with grim resignation. And, last of all, a witch, cackling madly as she danced in her yellow rags towards the roaring flames. Only when the last of their howls had dissipated into ash did the black stars rise. Night fell with brutal suddenness, bringing with it an awed hush among Cain and his cultists. The yellow haze faded. Its sickly hue muddied into the inky blackness of the dark. Oil paints speedily mixed together. The black stars rose over the horizon with unseemly haste, dragged on invisible wires into the bleak firmament above. It should not have been possible to see them, black on black. Yet Cain perceived them clearly, obsidian jewels in the night, glimmering without light or colour. Some of his cultists fell to their knees. Others began to moan, braying like beasts, terrified by a sudden eclipse.
"Black stars, rise!"
Cain called joyfully. He took a glowing stick from the pyre as an impromptu brazier.
"It is time! Black stars, rise!"
Armed with his light, he strode with purpose towards the mouth of the cave. The cave stunk of death, of rotted things, and of the carrion that feed upon them. Cain's brazier offered only meagre illumination. The darkness squeezed on its light, black claws reaching to snuff out its embers. He could barely see. And what he could see was far from comforting. The gleam of polished bone, rib cages picked clean by gnawing teeth, low-hanging threads of feathered fetishes, baubles of scrap metal jangling and rustling as they stumbled through, the darting scuttle of rodent things, half glimpsed and warped. Frightened mutters scratched through the darkness. Cain gritted his teeth and led the way. He cried out as he put a foot through something dead. The skeleton rattled, resisting his efforts to throw it off. In those few seconds of shuddering light and animal panic, Cain only caught glimpses of what he had stepped in. A swollen ribcage, closed around his ankle like a toothless bear trap. A screaming, skinless skull of something with too many mouths and too many eye sockets. He stumbled, and instinctually threw out an arm to arrest his fall. He shrieked as his elbow collided with stone. Cain heard his cultists rush forwards to offer assistance. He angrily waved them away.
"It is nothing. Away!"
With some effort, he wriggled his foot free. The noise of clacking bones and his own annoyed grunts of exertion left behind a heavy silence. The quiet seemed tainted by the charnel stink. No one spoke, the cultists collectively holding their breath. A sound cut through the darkness. It wasn't human. It sounded like a beast, something between a shriek and a caw, and yet boomingly low. Subdermal undertones shivered dread through everyone present. Cain froze. He heard the scraping of talons along the walls, of something scuttling on four limbs across the roof of the cave. He hastily drew the cloth from his robes. It was dried solid with old blood, crinkling between his gripping fingers. The light of his brazier snuffed out. All other illumination died with it, plunging the cave into utter blackness. Someone gasped. Another choked back a terrified sob. Cain heard a thump, the sound of someone, or something, landing softly upon the stone ahead. He trembled. Warm urine ran down the inside of his leg. He would have run, but his feet seemed nailed to the ground. He thrust the cloth into the darkness.
"Heed me,"
he called.
"Black stars rise, and my master calls the hunt. There will be many bodies, many souls."
He felt the gentle displacement of air as something large stepped closer. Each footfall was a soft, scratching rap against the rock. He felt warmth on his forehead, heard something quietly growling in a tuneless hum. Was it a device? Was it a breath? He did not know.
Many souls, and all you have to do is follow the scent."
He gasped as something impossibly strong snatched the cloth into the blackness. A thrill of ice shot through his veins, a surge of adrenaline and shock. A long, rattling sniff echoed around the cave. Cain frowned. He felt lightheaded. Something was wrong. He brought his left hand to his right wrist. His fingers felt warm and sticky. Only then did he realize that the monster had taken his right hand with the cloth. Cain screamed. The monsters screamed back, a screeching nightmare of echoing avian shrieks. The noise perforated his eardrums. Blood ran down the side of his face. Then everyone was screaming. But not for very long. Black stars rise across the dim city of the Tattered King and reflect darkness on the obsidian lake. He has the scent. The hunt is on. There is no future. There is no past. There is only the bestial present. Only the hunt. His brothers scratch along the cave ceiling, clothed in the raiment of wet, flayed skin and arterial blood. He directs them through hisses and clicks, angry squawks and low, keening cries. They crawl in ungainly, stilted movements towards the mouth of the cave, like prehistoric beasts dragging themselves from the ocean shore. Under the nonsense light of black stars, he rises onto his haunches. His brothers join him. Their false wings, ancient jump packs corrupted by the warp and brimming with hellfire light, shudder with energy. Hollow bones of metal and mutilated science twitch towards the sky. His warp talons caress the ground, blackening with the ash and soil that adheres to still wet blood. His archaic power armor is colorless in the dim light. The ceramite is scabbed over with the Empyrean's touch. It roils with the hunger of animal appetites. He throws the bloody cloth to the ground. His brothers descend upon it. They fight and scrabble in the dirt for scraps of crusty vitae, despite the warm blood still dripping from their shoulder pads and claws. He reaches his talons to the bleak sky and feels for the seams in reality. The tension strength of metaphysical threads is tested against the impossible sharpness of his avian claws. His talons twitch and shiver. His head bobs left and right, in sudden, jerking movements. His helmeted face is a scream of twisted half-beak voxgrill and feathered ceramite. He stops. His talons are outstretched towards black stars. He takes in a long, rattling sniff. Then he throws open his arms, and the veil itself is sundered. Another world, another battle, another massacre. Aristole slammed his accursed Crozius into the skull of a mutant abomination. The Dark Apostle felt the bone disintegrate. The grey meat of brain matter popped into a grim slurry. The mutant fell to the ground. Aristole didn't spare the corpse a second thought. He stepped forward, sweeping his Crozius in a wide arc to shatter the ribcage of another foe. He held the word aloft. As he chanted from its unholy pages, the blood ink on the vellum shifted and reformed, keeping pace with his recitation of the 13 blasphemies in the demon tongue of Sicarius. His disciples read aloud with him. Though mere mortals, dressed in black robes and armed only with heavy chains, they had not yet been injured in the chaos. Aristole took that to be a good omen. He finished killing the mutants swarming him, his armoured boots trampling their skeletons into the warm flesh that was Narcissum's earth. Their blood seeped into the world's greedy skin pores. The ground shook in ungodly delight, drinking deep of the murdered dead. Those tremors sent dangerous shivers through the dimensions of the iron pit. Scaffolding collapsed, sending hundreds of mutant slaves plummeting to their deaths. Vast buttresses groaned as flaking dead skin fell as dust into the great chiseled-out gouge in the flesh earth. Above, synapse lightning crisscrossed the sky. It cast the brief impression of a vast neural system across the purple depth heavens. Aristole scrutinized those fractured flashes of light. He vainly sought meaning amidst the madness of those scattered impulses and thoughts. His eyes shone. He saw drop pods descending towards the pit, cutting through the storm of Narcissum's world-mind atmospherics. The Dark Apostle chanted louder. As he approached the 13th blasphemy, he focused, careful not to make a traitor of his tongue.
Dansi talacotaliades, sin salavar in marasi calafaron sangua.
He raised the word high. The Forsworn roared in approval, killing mutants with monstrous chainswords and booming bolt guns of ancient design. Shudders trembled through the wrinkled fault lines of Narcissum. Oily pores swelled and burst like pressurized ovarian cysts, from which cackling demonettes emerged fully formed and gleeful. Unmasked and undisguised, they fell upon the mutants without restraint. Their pincered claws pinched into flesh and tore it from bone. The first drop pods landed. The Steel Brethren had finally arrived to defend their dig site. The drop pods exploded outwards with brutal force. Mechanical petals crushed mutant menials not already obliterated by the fiery descent of the heavy stems. The Steel Brethren came out shooting.
Iron within, iron without.
They fired their bolt guns into the melees. not caring for their slaves caught in the crossfire. The ablative armor of mutants was blended into bloody guts. 4 sworn Astartes fell, each a veteran of the Long War. Their sacrifices sent further convulsions of delight through the depths of the iron pit. The 4 sworn fell back in good order, retreating to the great girders and scaffolds that met the edges of the pit. Aristole went with them. His very essence thrummed with the lingering thrill of slaughter. Their retreat was covered by the demonettes. Overtaken by their wild reveries, the demons sprinted towards the Steel Brethren and were soon annihilated by a storm of overlapping bolts. More drop pods landed, forming a wall across the length of the iron pit. Steel Brethren Marines set heavy siege shields into the flesh earth to reinforce their position. The air crackled as obliterators stepped from the ether, each unleashing a hail of warp bullets that sliced apart armor and scaffold. Shrapnel from a bolt round blasted across Aristole's shoulder plate, sending him stumbling back. His disciple next to him was less fortunate. The mortal screamed. His eyes hung from partially severed optic nerves that dangled from a fully flayed face. The Dark Apostle grimaced. The first gunship landed. A steel grey Vindicator tank rumbled down its ramp. Dion contacted him through the Vox. The aspiring champion's voice was somewhat strained.
Dark Apostle, this position is untenable.
Have faith, brother,
Aristole replied tersely. Aristole clubbed his disciple to end the screaming, and then killed the other mortal for good measure. Bolts flew among the scaffolding. Astartes died. The 4 sworn returned fire, but they were pinned down, unable to break cover. Girders were sheared by warping beams. 4 sworn were crushed beneath tons of rockcrete and steel. The Vindicator fired, the concussive blast of its demolisher cannon throwing up bone and burning flesh earth. At this rate, the battle would soon be over. They claw their way through the skein of reality and fly on wings of fire. He screeches in savage joy. He has not flown for months, his soul glutted and lethargic from the previous hunt. To soar across the immaterium is to stretch out his essence across monstrous unreality, to ease out tensions in groaning armor, and feel the un-air of hell against his screaming face. Around him is the whirlpool storm of the warp. Colours that do not exist swirl in soon aborted eddies of desperate emotion. False reds follow the lick of bloody rage. Not quite pinks and purples linger in the secret passions of desperate souls. Tones between green and brown fester in morasses of trudging despair, and ever-shifting hues that defy description burn out the madnesses of fevered minds. They would be lost, if not for the scent. They traverse paths that are not truly paths. They cross distances that do not truly exist. They are not alone in the chaos. Other things creep and stalk in the emotion warp, never-born things of insatiable hunger and endless thirst. Some reach for them with half-formed shadows of tentacle limbs. Others recoil. It does not matter. They fly with the momentum of purest purpose, and none of these half-realized things can catch them. Unreality reforms and shifts about the contours of will. The hunt is the path. The path is the hunt. He shrieks in wild abandon. There is only the hunt. More bolt rounds ricocheted through the cover. Metal fractured. Structures groaned and the flesh earth shivered. Astartes died. Aristole gritted his teeth. He looked into the sky. He tried to see beyond the lightning flashes of Narcissum's insane world mind. The Vindicator fired again. Now properly ranged, its demolisher shell detonated with deadly effect. 3 Astartes disappeared into blood-stained fire. Another was thrown to the flesh earth, the Marine gripping the stump of his severed arm.
Dark Apostle,
Dion warned. Another synaptic flash lit the heavens. Beyond, briefly visible behind the purple ocean of sludging thoughts, Aristole finally saw what he was looking for. They glimmered blackly in the eternal firmament. The Dark Apostle smiled.
Black stars rise, brother. Be ready.
praise chaos.
Aristole began chanting once more. He channeled the half-sated appetites of Narcissum, the glutting of butchered mutant souls, the frustrated desires of Astartes who had waged war for 10,000 years just to die in a pit dug out by slaves. He channeled the screaming horror of his first disciple, the betrayed shock of the second, and the unbridled, undiluted, unrepentant hate that had long calcified in his rotten hearts. The iron pit trembled. Skin pores swelled behind the drop pod wall, the silhouettes of pincered claws forming in the mucus sacs and probing the elasticated veins of undulating flesh. Aristole closed his eyes. He felt the majesty of black stars over foggy lake and dim, abandoned city, and spoke the final words of power. The grotesque acne forming across the iron pit burst with the joyous birth of cavorting demons. Pale-fleshed demonettes ripped their way free with snapping claws, joined by loping fiends that tasted the blood-slick air with lashing, darting tongues. Thin-bodied steeds danced from the afterbirth pus, shrieking in agony and pleasure as demonettes drove pincers into flesh to clamber on their backs. The summoned throng was greeted with bolter rounds, but the flanking attack divided the Steel Brethren's fire. And there, above the center of their formation, the veil between reality and warp was beginning to tear. Aristole's eyes gleamed. It was now or never.
Charge!
He roared.
For the first apostle of chaos!
For the Aurelian! For the primordial truth!
The prey is close. He carves a path from Empyrean oceans to warp-racked skies. They emerge in a place that is not quite real, but altogether more real from where they were before. There is no hesitation. He was once an Astartes with gen-crafted reaction times and battle-forged instincts, and those faculties are now honed to animal acuteness by the Immaterium's touch. Neural pathways spark with light. Eyes absorb a blur of colour and movement as they focus on the prey. A vox grill that should not function as a beaked snout inhales a battlefield of bloody scents, working with mutant neuroglottis to taste apart physaline and sweat and vitae and amniotic fluids. Already he is swooping down with his talons outstretched. Mere milliseconds have passed. Each of his brothers has twitched along with him into a murderous dive. Each has locked onto their shared, doomed prey. Their prey is large, a giant of steel, grey and black trimmings. The interlocking cogs of 2 8-pointed stars are painted in red on its left shoulder pad. It is an ogre wielding a great hammer of actinic power. Its eyes are red and twinkling with the constant readout of battlefield data. It is a monster in tactical dreadnought armor, a beast of steely muscle and iron will. It has no chance at all. They complete their dive in perfect choreography. Each of his brothers takes a limb. He goes for his torso. They are a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. They are the many taloned feet of an ambushing bird of prey. They are the claws that rip and sunder and leave bloody tendrils for the ashen sun. The prey has lost 2 limbs and half its guts before it can react. It throws off one of his brothers, swinging its titanic weapon as it slams heavily to the ground. The hammer forms a sluggish parabola that briefly scatters them into the air. They swirl overhead, screeching and shrieking. He descends with his brothers on their prey again. Bodyguards come to the prey's defense. The hunters choose their targets. No longer acting in unison, each brother obeys the primal instincts of his murderous nature. Warp talons sink into the minuscule seams between ceramite plates, blood spurting from beneath gorget and armpit rivets. Steel brethren stumble, left savaged and bleeding from catastrophic wounds. Their chainswords cut only air. He and his brothers have flitted back to the sky in avian twitches of staticky movement. Gunfire now. A more organised defence. The hunters shriek and scream, warped jump packs carrying them higher in corkscrew spirals of evasive flight. A few bolts detonate across twisted ceramite. Physaline runoff burns away shoots of feathers and send his brothers into greater spasms of bestial outrage. He leads them higher, beyond the effective range of bolters and small arms fire. They briefly reconsolidate, before they are separated by the path of a crack missile, a hypnotic flurry of dark silhouettes against a lightning-racked sky. Warped oculobes focus and hyper-focus on the battle beneath. Background details of steel and demon and crimson-red melee blur into the peripheral. The mutilated body of the prey is magnified in his eyes. He screams in anger and frustration. The prey is being dragged to a gunship, being dragged to safety. This will not do. He and his brothers flock to form a javelin of talons and claws, and dive once more. Speed, speed, speed. The air would flay his skin if it was not made of ceramite and adamantine and warp. Gravity and thrusters compete for which will bring him first to fleshy earth. Inhuman physiology compensates for the monstrous force acting on his bones and organs. His vision narrows, the prey bordered by creeping circles of woozy black. A stream of fire rises to meet them, each bullet formed of the warp itself. The fusillade plucks a hunter from the sky. His brother shrieks as he dies. Impact! They strike, each a meteor collision of Empyrean knives. His brothers eviscerate the prey carriers. He lands on the prey itself. The prey roars. The warp talons bury deep into its chest. He screams too. He is hit with such force that he feels the impact as jagged fractures through the bones of his mutated arms. It hurts. He doesn't like pain, at least not when it is inflicted on him. He leans towards the neck of his prey. His beaked vox grill cracks apart and takes a huge bite through ceramite and hardened flesh. He tastes the scent in his essence, wet and warm and vital. He throws apart his arms in a violent spasm. This time, it is not the veil that is torn asunder. This time, it is the prey. Aristole leaned against the burned-out wreckage of the Vindicator tank. 2 of his lungs had collapsed. The final lung was overtaxed, leaving him short of breath. His crimson armour was ravaged by shrapnel. The minuscule prayers inscribed into the plate were largely scratched out, as if by some furious tutor correcting lazy work in the scolum. The demons were gone. Most had been destroyed by the Steel Brethren, and, when the battle was over, the Forsworn had been forced to violently banish the rest. The Dark Apostle smiled. Though often inconvenient, a demon's lust for slaughter was a sacred thing to witness. The aspiring champion Dion limped over. His demon blade was drenched in transhuman blood. The eye in its hilt strained, bloodshot and thirsting as it searched for new opportunities to kill. Aristole could almost hear it screaming in Dion's mind.
Praise Chaos, Dark Apostle. The day is ours.
The flesh earth of Narcissum shuddered. Ashy skin sloughed down the edges of the iron pit. Blood bubbled as it was siphoned into the depths, the demon world suckling at the teat of slaughter.
I told you to have faith, brother.
That you did, Dark Apostle. That you did.
Aristole nodded magnanimously. He did not doubt Dion's faith in the Primordial Four. No, the issue was his brother's faith in him. A problem, but not one to be dealt with now.
Narcissum is sated, but not yet glutted. It needs more.
Brother Medes has made contact. The enemy's vessel is secured. Only minimal resistance.
Good.
Aristole glanced across the bloodied iron pit and saw the warp talons that had emerged at the most serendipitous moment, and thus turned the tide of battle. One of them was dead. The rest were gathered around him. Aristole's smile broadened.
Look there, Brother Dion. Our friends perform their sacred mysteries. A rare thing to witness.
The warp talons cannibalized their brother. Their helmets reformed into razored beaks, cracking apart power armor to reach the soft meats within.
Praise Chaos, Dark Apostle.
Aristole chuckled. He watched the warp talons for a few more moments, before bringing his attention back to the aspiring champion.
Instruct Brother Medes to begin. Every serf, every slave. I want them here, in this pit. We will have Narcissum vomit up its treasures yet.
Your will be done, Dark Apostle.
Thank you for listening to this video from the Archive Tower. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.